Duncan was leaning over a workbench, finishing up a little program, when his sight went black and he heard a familiar voice giggle. This again, he thought as he stood up straight. Okay, I'll play along. I wonder who it is. Are they perhaps ticklish around here? He reached his hands behind him and started tickling his apprentice, not stopping when her hands had moved from his eyes. Duncan spun around and saw Kim laughing and squirming, trying to make him stop. Okay, I give up. Duncan, stop! Kim said between giggles. She had seen him standing over the workbench like he had been for the past couple of days. Kim knew that he needed a break, so she did the only thing to get his attention. Block out his sight. She hadn't expected him to tickle her though. Fine, Duncan said as he stopped tickling her, but not removing his hands from her waist. Kim grabbed his hands and pulled her friend out of the room and down the stairs. Soon they were out on the roof looking at the stars. Duncan took off his gloves and leaned back against the cone roof. Kim shuffled back and sat with him, looking at the stars. Why did you pull me out here? Duncan turned his head towards the beauty sitting beside him. You needed a break. You've been in that room for 2 days straight. I just thought it would be nice if you'd come out and look at the stars with me. Kim replied, turning her face away, feeling a blush creep up her neck. Duncan chuckled and put his arms around her, pulling her close. Thank you, Kim. I really needed it. He smiled down at her and kissed her on the forehead. Kim rested her head on his chest and wrapped her arms around his waist. Duncan put his chin on top of her head and relaxed. They fell asleep like this, in each other's embrace. A few days later, Kim was making dinner with headphones on, listening to music. Suddenly she felt 2 arms around her waist, but instead of pulling away or flinching, she leaned backwards into the body behind her. Hello, Duncan, she said, reaching her arms around his neck. He smiled and kissed the top of her head. Hello, Kim, my sweet little panda bear. Rythian often thought of approaching her, that one girl in the subway. She stood out amongst the bland crowd of company employees wearing matching grey suits and ties on their way to work. Her hair glowed a sunset red and caught Rythian's eyes every day, yet he simply sat across from her. Rythian failed to find the courage to address the girl. He just watched her. He never caught her looking his way. She only stared up at the ceiling and the dangling straps that hung from the bars. Occasionally she would pull out paper and doodle on it. Imagining all the various scenarios of their meeting, Rythian watched the girl doodle and stare upwards. His favourite included the train being filled to the brim. The girl's normal seat would be taken, but Rythian would have a miraculous open seat next to him. She'd hurry and flop down next to him. The two would sit in contented silence. Rythian loved that scenario, though it still involved him not talking to her. The girl seemed like the type of person whom he would feel most secure in silence with. On a cool summer afternoon, Rythian boarded the subway on his way home as usual. The whole station was far from crowded, yet as Rythian stepped onto the train, he found himself latching onto a leather strap dropping from the steel bar above the seat where the girl sat. She eyed Rythian inconspicuously as she looked upwards. A trio of older ladies boarded and took seats where Rythian normally sat across from the red-haired girl. The ladies gossiped about some dirt factory as the doors slid shut. The train suddenly lurched forward. Rythian stumbled and flopped next to the girl. She jumped and looked at him with surprise. You should have sat down before, she commented. Her voice was silvery and pleasant in Rythian's ears. The sudden realization came to Rythian that this girl was vastly different than he had made her out to be. I suppose so, Rythian replied. He caught a hint of surprise in her eyes. She met his gaze. My name's Zoe. The Zoe Pro as heck, Zoe introduced proudly. She stretched her hand across her chest to Rythian. Rythian Inderborn, Rythian greeted quietly. He zoned out as he looked straight into her deep green eyes. Zoe's voice still pleasantly stunned him. Zoe waved her outstretched hand, looking down at Rythian's hand expectantly. Rythian snapped out of his little daydream and shook her hand. You're kinda out there, huh? Zoe laughed. Come again? You have a faraway look in your eyes. You should see your eyes, Rythian teased. You should see your face, Zoe gestured to Rythian's scarf hovering over his nose. You should see my face, Rythian retorted, without thought. The two looked at each other blankly before laughing. The old lady stopped to glare at them with looks that said, such immaturity, much annoyance. Vivian and Zoe twisted in their seats to face the crowd away. They rode in silence, the kind of silence that Vivian only imagined could exist. Zoe started doodling on her paper. Vivian looked over her shoulder carefully. His eyes widened and he blushed as he recognized his figure sitting across from Zoe. I was nosediving through the sky and hit the floor, knocking myself out. Hello? Are you okay? I felt something drag me onto a soft surface. I lay there unable to move. Where am I? Aha, you're awake. He walked over and stood next to me. He was considerably shorter than me. Hi, I'm Honeydew. I nodded. I don't know who I am. I sat up and held my throbbing head. I think my name is... I don't know. He smiled. Let's call you Zephos. Well, Zephos, would you like some food? I nodded, and he handed me a fluffy roll. I looked at it in confusion. It's called bread. You can eat it. I carefully put it in my mouth and bit into it. It tasted bland and I spat out. He took the bread and added something to it. What did you do? Gave it some flavour. He handed me the bread and I bit into it again. This time the flavour of a sweet food exploded in my mouth. What is this? That is called jam. He pointed at the red sticky stuff. I smiled and bit into the bread again. Are you feeling better? Are you okay? I nodded slowly. Okay, that's good. He walked away and put some things in the chest. I lay back down on the bed. Thank you. I fell asleep almost immediately. I woke up wearing some different clothes. I was wearing a red jacket that was lined with gold and a blue and white striped top, some dark brown pants and some knee-high leather boots. I got up and looked around a little. There was no sign of my other clothes. I found the smaller man outside. Excuse me, who are you? He turned and smiled. I'm Honeydew. You can be my friend. I would teach you everything I know. I nodded and smiled. I liked this fellow.